Today, Andrea Robertson is here with me. She has an adopted son, and I'm just going to ask her about her experiences and some of the things that she has, the process that she took to adopt, and then some of her experiences being an adopted parent. So first off, I always like to ask, what led you to adoption in the first place?
I knew from a very young age we were going to adopt, or I was going to adopt someday. I just, ever since I was a little kid, I don't know why. That's just kind of a weird thing. But when Eli and I were first married, so this is probably 17 years ago, because we've been married about 18 because we didn't have Emma yet. I had a really a dream that really just it kept coming and it just resonated with me. And there were two girls in the dream, and they were both had very brown skin, and they were sisters, and they kept calling me mom, and they're like, Mom, are you going to find us? And I just thought that was it just struck me. So I don't know. So I actually went to my LDS bishop at the time, and I asked him, because we hadn't even thought about having kids because we'd only been married for a year, and asked him if he would give me a blessing so that I could, so the dream would quit coming, or that I would know, are we supposed to adopt right now? I needed some more clarification and answers, and because I'd gone to the temple and hadn't really received any concrete anything, and he gave me the most beautiful blessing, and it was just him and Eli and me in the room. And he started sobbing after he gets done giving me the blessing. And he goes, I can't tell you everything that I just saw and witnessed, but you're on the right track. And I was like, okay. And so it kind of, in a way, those feelings kind of took a back seat for a little bit. And I didn't have the dream again. And I thought about it all the time, but it wasn't at the forefront of my mind anymore. And then when we got pregnant with Emma a few years later, it was a total surprise. We weren't trying. It was just one of those, all of a sudden I'm like, I'm late. What, and yeah. And then when she was about 18 months old, we started trying for more children, and nothing. And then she's 3 years old and nothing. And then she's 4 years old and nothing. And so then we started going to a fertility specialist, and he basically just put, they start you on the low dose Clomid at first. And there was another medication after Clomid didn't work for about 6 months. I can't remember what the other one was called. But it made me pass out. So that was fun. And then he basically was like, I don't really do anything further than this. You're going to have to go to an actual fertility clinic. And at the time, even though it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, at the time, there really wasn't a lot of options. There was a fertility clinic in Pleasant Grove, and there's one in Salt Lake. You know what I mean? There wasn't a lot. There's so many more now, and so many more options, and so many more doctors deal with it. And it was funny because we started going through the process of doing IUIs, and we did about 6 or 7 of them. And after the 7th one didn't work, I just looked at Eli and I was like, I'm kind of done. I don't it's hard on my body. It's hard on my heart. What do you think about adopting? And he was like, I'm cool if we adopt. And the funny thing is, when we were dating, I mentioned something to him about adoption, and he's like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And I thought that was so weird, because I had mentioned it to other guys I had dated, and they were like, I will never have a kid that's not my own blood. You know what I mean? And that just always put a bad taste in my mouth, because I'm like, they are your blood. You know what I mean? Because that's how I view my son. I view him as he's mine, and anyway, so we talked to the fertility doctor, told him that we were didn't want to pursue IVF, and that we wanted to put that money towards adoption, because at the time IVF was about $12,000, And that's a huge chunk of change when, because you know how much adoptions cost.
Yep.
Like that's, so, you know, it was kind of like, we're guaranteed a baby or we're not. And it's, you know, a huge chunk of change either way. And so we both just really felt at peace with it. And then we went in and met with LDS services and just kind of like, they have those, I don't know if you ever went to one when you were thinking about adopting, but they had like orientation meetings. And so we just went to one and we kind of just didn't really do anything. Like 6 months went by and we didn't do anything. And then one day I was like, we really need to do this. Like we need to be serious about it. To adopt through LDS services, you have to be deemed infertile. So I had to go back to the doctor and I had to have a bunch more procedures done. And then you know, Eli had to be tested and all this stuff. And once they do all, you know, where they clean your tubes out and they check you for endometriosis and, you know, all of those things, and everything's still coming back normal, but I'm not getting pregnant. We finally got a doctor to sign off that said, like, there's nothing like we can pinpoint why she's not getting pregnant, but it's, you know, she's not, and it's been 8 years. So yeah, when we adopted our son, Emma was 8 years old, which is crazy that it was that long. I don't know. So.
And I've been hearing from a lot of people, and this is my own experience as well, but as I've done these interviews, a lot of people have, when I ask them what first interested them or why they pursued adoption, they had that feeling very young. They knew very young that they were going to adopt. And I'm not saying that that has to be everyone, but it seems to be a really common pattern. It was for myself. I was really young, like a child.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I was going to adopt, and my friend would always kind of tease me and be like, Shanna, you can't have a black baby. Look at you. That's not going to happen. And I was like, but it is. Like, it's going to happen. I just feel it. I know it. And she would always tease me about it. And lo and behold, now I have 2 black children.
Yeah.
So I really feel a lot of times that we are given that to help us through the process so that we know we have some feeling like this is what we're supposed to do, to give us some strength to go through the process of adoption, just to have that deep feeling in your heart. And
yeah.
So I love hearing from other people that that is their similar experience. So if you'll just talk now a little bit about what the process was to start adoption. So how, kind of what steps you had to take to get to the place from when you're like, we're going to think about adoption, we went to our orientation meeting, to I'm bringing the baby home.
So it's weird because like trying to think back on it now, and he's 7, so it's not like it was that long ago, but it's almost like a blur. Because for me, I feel like everything happened so fast. And to me, that's a testament that like it was supposed to happen and it needed to happen. And so everything just worked out and all the steps took place and it went very quickly. I know that's not everybody's story, but it was for me, I felt like. So I think I called back the caseworker maybe 6 months after the orientation. So they made us go to another orientation. And then they had some classes at the time also, like they did like a little 3-day workshop that we went to. And so we got to hear from other adoptive parents and like question and answer panels. There was a birth mother panel where we got to ask questions. It was very informative. And again, I started dragging my feet and didn't fill out any of my paperwork and didn't call the caseworker back. And I think another like 6 months went by. And one day I just was like, Eli, like, we need to make a decision. Like, Emma's 7 years old now. What are we going to do? You know, are we going to go forward with IVF? Or are we going to go through adoption? Like, what do we want to do? And I don't know what kept us from dragging our feet, but obviously we needed to wait so that we got our baby. But I finally called back the caseworker, told her we were ready, asked her what we needed to do. And so the first thing that they told us that we needed to do was get a home study. And then after our well, okay, I hope I'm getting this right, because I honestly don't remember if, I think the home study was very first, before they even had us fill out any paperwork, or like, you know how you do set up a profile. I know yours was a little bit different than mine because you didn't use the same place, but we had to set up a profile and have pictures and like a bio and that whole thing. And I don't think we were approved to do any of that until our home study was done. So the very first thing was, I think we had to pay, it was over $1,000 to get a home study done. And so for me, like $1,000 might as well have been $10,000 at the time. And so we had a yard sale and you know, did some other fundraising things, and we were able to raise the money and pay for our home study. And then after all that was done and we got approved, they gave us our paperwork. Well, again, I waited and waited and waited and didn't fill it out, and probably like 3 or 4 months went by, and all of a sudden I just shot straight up in bed one morning, and it was like a voice very clear in my head was like, get your paperwork done and get it done now. And I was like, okay. So that day I finished all of it in that day. Like, it should have taken like at least 2 weeks to get it done, and I got it all done in that day. And then our paperwork was approved like within a week, which was crazy, because she told us that it never gets approved that quick, and that they always send, they're usually sending it back to you to have you fix things or reword things or whatever. They kind of coach you through to make you look your best, so that when birth mothers are going through the profiles to find you, that that you stand out, you know. And anyway, so we got everything handed in, we got it all approved, and then we just kind of sat and waited and forgot about it. And then we got an email from a potential birth mom. So all of our paperwork and everything was handed in and approved on my dad's birth. Like, so we got the approval on my dad's birthday, which was November 14th. And then we got our first email from a potential birth mom, I think I want to say February maybe. And it didn't really go anywhere. It was just kind of one of those, like, we didn't even know like if she was real, because we had heard stories of birth moms that or women who want attention that just get on and look at the profiles and kind of bait you. I don't know if you'd ever heard of this, but it happened to my friend, where they actually like chatted through Skype with a girl for like 6 months and sent her gifts and like just had this great relationship with her, to come to find out she wasn't even pregnant. And so I was so worried that was going to happen to us. So I was like very like guarded when I would get an email, because that had just so recently happened to some close friends of ours. But anyway, and then we got an email in, I think it was April, of a birth mom that wanted to meet us. And she picked us and had the baby, like, I think maybe 3 weeks later. And so it was like this very like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? We have nothing, you know? And so my family threw a baby shower for us. I think he was about a month old. And so that helped get us the diapers and clothes and things that we needed that we didn't have time to buy before he came. But anyway, and now he's 7.
And that's one of the things when you go into adoption, I think you should be aware of, is you really don't know when that baby's coming. So you have to be prepared that it may take a long time, or it may be a really short time. And in my case, for both of my adoptions was like, your baby's here.
Yep.
And like a whirlwind. Okay, I have 3 weeks and my baby's here. So just, you kind of have to just be in a place of like, whatever, like I am willing to accept whatever's going to happen. And you just have to kind of get rid of expectation, I think, about like, okay, I knew this friend and she adopted and it happened really fast, or I knew this friend and she adopted and it was 3 years. I think you just kind of have to let that go, because everybody's story is different and they come to it all differently, and the way that your baby comes to you is different. And so you can't really base it off of anybody else's experience. you have to be willing to just be like, I'm in this for the ride, and just whatever happens and whatever I feel like really strongly, because sometimes you get matched and then it doesn't work out and it's devastating, or you get matched and everything goes really smoothly and the baby comes home. And I think you just have to know that as you go into that process, that is a very you just have to let go of expectations, that you are just not sure what's going to happen, and you just have to be along for the ride.
Yep.
Which is really hard, really, really hard to do. But I think that's important to know, that you can't really hold up to anybody else's stories, because everyone is so different about placement and time. So, okay. So you went through an agency, which now that agency no longer does adoptions, but
Nope.
Why? And I think this is really important too, and I'm not sure how, I know how my agency works, but I know that they go a little bit differently. But I really feel like going through an agency is the safest bet when it comes to a baby, is having an agency, so that you can make sure that everything is all legal. And a lot of the times they'll screen the birth mothers and make sure that they are a birth mother. Our agency was very, very good about that. And I felt very confident that I knew that these women were going to be taken care of, and that they were pregnant, and that the agency was doing everything that they could to protect not just my rights, but the rights of my birth mother as well. And that was really, really important to me. So that's just one of the things that I, in my own personal experience, feel like an agency is your best bet to go through when you are looking to adopt. So as her son and my son are actually the same age, they're like 3 months apart, and we were doing the adoption process at the same time. So that was pretty fun. And they've like gone to school together and been on soccer teams together. So it's been kind of fun to watch these two boys grow up. But what do you think are some of the most rewarding things that you have experienced because of adoption?
Well, I mean, obviously the most rewarding is I have my son now, you know. I feel like my family's complete, and he definitely filled a hole, I guess, for lack of a better explanation. Like, he's just been such a blessing to our family. He is got just an amazing light about him, and his personality is just, you know, he keeps me on my toes, but in such a good way. And so it's also, and I know that you know this story, but I feel like I need to mention this. It's also filled a huge hole in my mom's heart, because when she was 19, she placed a baby for adoption. And it's been healing for both of us to like see it come full circle. Like, she goes, I feel like I placed so that you could receive. And then when he was 2 weeks old, her birth son found her. And so now he's a part of our lives. And like, it's just been such a healing journey all around. But I think I had a different perspective going in because of what my mom went through. And I didn't know about it until I was maybe 14 or 15 when she told me everything and the whole story. I had no idea until then. And so watching it from her side and the heartbreak and her situation, and knowing that every single birth mother out there has a different situation and a different story and a different background, and it, you know, and so knowing that going in helped me to have a different perspective, I guess. And so anyway, so it's just been such an amazing thing for our whole family.
And I feel like I wanted to do this to just raise awareness about adoption for people who are interested or looking or curious, because I feel like it's maybe a topic that hasn't been talked about a whole bunch. And I think there are a lot of people who have misconstrued ideas about what it is and how it works. I know that when my story came out, and Inside Edition did a story, and then some of the comments that have been received because of that. I think a lot of people don't understand like how it works or what it really is, and they've been misconstrued about what their ideas are about what adoption is. And so I love hearing these stories and just hearing that these families are really, I truly believe that these families are meant to be together, and that this is just a different way to bring a child into the home they were supposed to be in always. And that's my personal perspective on it. But I love hearing other people and seeing how these children come and help complete their lives. They always feel like there was something missing. And then when that child comes in, it feels like that was what was gone. That's what I meant. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. But raising a child is raising a child, and it's hard no matter what child. But I was just wondering if you would tell us a little bit about some of the unique challenges that you faced raising an adoptive child.
So I don't know that I've really had any, I don't know that I've had really any like unique challenges, because he's never been anything to me but my own. Do you know what I mean? And so and I know that it's people don't know he's adopted. Honestly, like when people hear that for one reason or another, they're like, what? I didn't know your son was adopted. You know what I mean? Because he's looks like us, And so I feel like my perspective on that is way different than yours, because yours have a different skin color. And so it's obvious, you know what I mean? And so so you have very different challenges and different things. People have probably said things to you that you're like, okay, you're, not socially aware of what's, acceptable to say in public. But I've never experienced that. And what I was a little bit worried about my grandparents, just because, they're old fashioned. Like I thought that they would be like, why are you adopting? Or that they were going to treat him differently. And I shouldn't have ever thought that. And nobody has treated him any different. He's a part of our family, and that's just the way it is. So I don't feel like personally I've had any challenges or unique situations in that regard.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. So as, let me see here, let me look over my notes just a second. So if you could share one thing about adoption with the world, what would you tell them about adoption?
Well, I definitely think I agree with you that the stigma around adoption needs to be changed. The story around adoption needs to be changed. I think adoption needs to be a lot more accessible, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like there's so many amazing parents out there that want to adopt, and they hear $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, and they had just immediately put that wall up, and it's never going to happen for me because there's no way I could ever come up with that amount of money. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there needs to be more programs for things like that. But the one thing, and I know it's like a slogan, but like, adoption is love and adoption is family. And it doesn't matter how you get your family, they're your family. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't know how, I can't even put into words like what I'm trying to say. And until you experience it, you don't fully know. And that's what I tell people that don't have kids. Like, until, like, oh, I can't stand watching other people's kids. Well, until you have your own, you don't really know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes. So I feel like until you've actually gone through it, you don't really know, like, when you see your baby for the first time, the love and the emotion and the spirituality that comes behind that is, it's hard to express. It really is. And so I don't know how, and hopefully you're taking the steps to do so, to change the narrative and change the perspective and the stigma around adoption. And I feel like with the infertility rates and how they've skyrocketed, so many more people are looking into adoption. So many more people. I mean, when I was a kid, my cousin was adopted, and I mean, I knew like 2 adopted kids. That was it. And now it's like, it's so much more common now. Like, there's so many more kids out there. And so hopefully the narrative's changing just because infertility rates have gone up. But yeah, I don't know. Adoption is love. Like, I don't know what else more to say than that, I guess.
And yeah, I truly, and I don't believe that everyone should adopt or that everyone needs to adopt. I don't believe that at all. But I do believe that there are families like ours who really feel that pulling and that need, that there's another baby out there that's not going to come through them. That no matter what, I wouldn't, had I had more children myself, I wouldn't have these babies. And these are my babies. And so they were supposed to come to me, but the way that they were supposed to come to me was just through a different venue. Mm-hmm. And I think there needs to be a little less hatred or unkindness towards the women who place babies.
Yep.
Because that's very hard. And I've heard in my particular situation, I have 2 children from the same birth mom. And when our story came out, when we brought our daughter home, so many of the comments were so negative towards my birth mother, of why is she having more children when she couldn't even have the first. And I just felt, you don't know this woman. You're taking this much of our story and you're telling her how she should live her life or what she's done wrong. And in my mind, she's a hero and she's a woman, and she knew, despite whatever her mistakes may have been, she brought these 2 beautiful children into the world, and she allowed them and me to have a home and to have a family. And so for me, I think that maybe some women are so afraid of that stigma that adoption for them is also, a scary route. Yeah. So I really hope to help people to understand that there are circumstances where it is good and right to place a baby, and that baby I'm not saying that every adoptive parent is wonderful, because unfortunately we live in a world where some people just
nobody's suck. Perfect. Yeah, right? Nobody's
some
perfect.
People just suck. So, but in most cases, I truly believe that that child is truly, truly loved. And I know that we do have some difficulties being adoptive parents. There are things that will come up that we'll have to deal with as our children age and as they wonder where they came from. And there are things that, and we have to know what we're signing up for a little bit. Yeah. We have to know that, there's might be some challenges that arise that are unique to the situation of adoption. Yep. But that we're willing to take those on because we love these children like they're ours, because they are. So I hope that, yes, we can help to just, as we share these stories, help people to realize how much love is underneath it all. And that is truly what I believe is the underlying reason why people do it, is because of love. And then my last question for you is, if you could give advice to someone who is just, who is thinking about starting adoption, or who is in the beginning stages of the adoption process, what advice would you give to them?
Learn as much as you can. Talk to birth moms, talk to adoptive parents, talk to adoptees. Just be aware of all situation, all possible outcomes, incomes. Do you know what I mean? Like, just be as educated as possible so that you know exactly what you're getting into. But even though it's hard, you get way more. Do you know what I mean? You come out on top. It's worth every heartache, every penny, every, misguided, I don't know, thing that someone, yes, comment. Yeah. It's worth all of that, because you come out on top in the end because you get the best gift of all. And so, yeah.
And I think, of course, we can't know every situation that's going to come up. We can't predict our futures, but we can make ourselves aware that of kind of what might happen or what are the possibilities of, of adoption. And if you're willing to, worst case scenario it, which, worst case scenario, a lot of us don't even make it that far, but
yeah,
if you're willing to do that, to bring a child into your home and to love a child, then I think you go for it.
yeah.
And I know, I think another, like you said, the money is a big thing, and it was a huge thing for me. I got a lot of comments that I was this wealthy white woman, and I was like laughing. I was like, oh my heavens,
I wish.
even knew.
Yeah.
If you even knew what I did to try and get this baby here to pay for this, I don't think you would be saying those things.
Yeah.
But those obstacles are overcome. When that baby is your baby, those obstacles, it literally,
miracles happen.
At points I was like, this is impossible. We are never going to come up with this money. Especially because mine were so fast. I had 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even in the adoption system with Ani to come up with this money. And it was like, this is not possible. And yet here I am a year and a half later. And no, we are not wealthy, but we are surviving and we are getting by. And she was so supposed to be here. So don't let those obstacles, if you feel so strongly, don't let those obstacles stand in your way. Know that there will always be a path to have that happen. And so thank you for your insight. Thank you for telling us about your process and being open and honest about your experiences. If there's anything else that you would like to say about adoption, or that you would like to share with someone who is thinking about it, you can do that.
So this just brought something up for me. And we both have many miracle stories on different things. But when we were, I think it was either the day we were supposed to leave the hospital or the day before, whatever it was the day I had to pay like the rest of the adoption fees, before we could take him home. And so, I called the bank to transfer the money from my savings account into my checking account so that I could call and give them my debit card number. And I was $1,000 short. And I was like, how? Like, I know that we put that money in there. Like, we put the exact amount that we needed in our savings account just so that, everything would be good. And so I'm freaking out. I called the bank and they're like, oh, well, since you have the money in the account, we just went ahead and paid like your credit card bills and your car payment for the month. And I'm like, that wasn't due till the end of the month. And I needed that money in there for a reason, and so I'm freaking out. And at the time, Eli had only been working, at his current job for maybe, I'm trying to think, 2 years. He was still getting like base pay. I am like, I'm doing my little like side jobs I do, but like, anyway. So I call our other bank to see if we just happen to have some money in that savings account. And there was an extra exactly $1,000 in our bank account. And I was like, what the heck? So I get on and I'm like looking like at the thing, and there is a deposit. It says UVU deposit for $500 each. So I call Eli and I'm like, oh, UVU accidentally put $1,000 in our account. So we're going to have to call them and figure this out, because he hadn't been a student there for a year. Okay. For a year. So he calls UVU, and, he was like, he had left to go to the bank to try to like straighten things out. So he calls me back and he's in tears. And if you know my husband, he does not show emotion. And he's in tears and he's like, you are never going to believe this. And I'm like, what? And he's like, UVU had some extra money left over from I don't remember. And I was like, what? Colleges never have extra money left over. Are you kidding me? And he's like, so they did a drawing for scholarships and I drew out twice. And I'm like, no. And he's like, no, we don't have to pay that money back. He's like, they told me, like, they're like, your name drew out twice. So first of all, he's not even a student there. Hadn't been for a year. And UVU just had to have like extra money floating around, which never happens. Like, it was just so, like, there was just so many cool things that fell into place in that last couple of weeks leading up to it that like just kept testifying to me, like, this is your son, that he needs, like, you know what I mean? You're his parents. He needs to be with you. And I mean, it was just like the craziest thing to me, but that's just one miracle in my life that was such an in your face miracle I will never forget. And so,
yeah. And
I feel like miracles like that happen all the time when things are supposed to work out.
Yeah, they totally do. And I think that that's such a good reminder that, you know, if you believe in God, or if you believe in, I don't know, destiny at all, that whatever it takes to bring that child home, they make it home. They make it home to where they're supposed to be. And I know that it's got to be devastating to have a baby placed and then not come home with you. I myself have not experienced that, but I understand it's not an uncommon thing when with adoption. But that baby, in my belief, that wasn't the baby that was supposed to come home with you, and the baby that is supposed to come home with you will. And so thank you for sharing that story. It's not one that I've heard, having known you all these years. I haven't heard
really?
that. So no, I haven't.
I never told you that.
Yeah, and I have some very, very similar to that, where it was just like money came out of nowhere. You know, the sky fell down and all of a sudden I have the exact amount I need to take care of what I have to take care of. And so I love it. I love it so much. So thanks for being here. I enjoyed talking with you, and I hope that this is helpful to help you, guide you on your way towards adoption, or to help inform you about what it's like to adopt a child and to be an adoptive parent in an adoptive family. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. See ya.
Yeah.